Hello, students. How are you doing? I hope everything is alright. So it's a new day, and we have a new topic. Today's topic is relative clause. Okay, and in relative clause we have the relative pronouns who, that, and which. Okay, we have some others, but they are not in our scope today. I'm Zania Rouf from Kurt Fairbairn, and I'm happy to be your grammar level 3 teacher. So let's start our lesson, shall we? So as I said, the relative clauses are pretty common in the English language, and they have a relative pronoun in them. Sometimes the relative pronoun is removed, but it is at least implied in every sentence. Okay. So what is the job of a relative pronoun? A relative pronoun defines the noun that comes after them. Okay. So they define the noun that comes right after them. So you usually see the noun. Oh, I should say. That's a shame. I should say before them. Okay, here. I should say before them because the noun comes before the pronoun. What are the pronouns? The pronouns are they, are that, who, and which. So as you see, this is my noun, right? This is my noun, and this is my noun, okay? So my relative pronoun comes right after that, right? Comes after the noun. So the noun comes before the pronoun, okay? What about the job of a relative clause? The relative clause joins two sentences together. So in the English language, sometimes when two sentences are closely related together, they either have the same adjective, same subject, or the same object, or the same subject and object. In those cases, you can usually relate the sentences together using the relative clause and the relative pronouns in each of the relative clause if they're not removed. Okay. So this is one job, right? It joins two sentences together, or sometimes it gives more information about something in the sentence. Okay. So it's not always joining two sentences together. It is in some sense, but sometimes the job is to give extra information about something. In that case, you will need a comma, okay, or two commas depending on the sentence. Okay. So let me just give you a couple of examples here. So the cat that I bought is red, right? The cat that. That here defines or describes the noun cat, okay? It describes that noun. In this case, the teacher who spoke to me, right? Who spoke to me is here. So the teacher who spoke to me is here. The banana, which is yellow, is tasty, right? So which defines or describes the word banana, the noun banana, right? And in this case I have commas because which is yellow is a relative clause with a relative pronoun which that gives me extra information about the banana. We already know the banana is yellow. We don't need this, right? So it's extra information, something in the common sense. So in this case, it is not necessary for the clause to be here. I can delete it and say the banana is tasty, right? It still makes perfect sense. This extra information is not necessary. I'll get into that in a minute, okay? So let's go on. So first of all, the relative pronouns, let's just define them. Who is used for people, okay? For people. Which is used for things, okay? Anything that's not people. And that is used for both. You can use that for both, but it is tricky sometimes. It is wiser to use who and which, okay? It is better. It's always better, but you can use that as well. But there are some tricky situations in which you might get into trouble for using them, okay? So let's just focus on that again. I bought a new car, so I have car because car is not people. I say either which or that, okay? They are both correct. My cousin, who? That is Stan lives in New York. So in this case, I am using who and that because my cousin is a person, right? It is people. So I have to distinguish between these two tricky situations, between people and things. Okay. So nothing more here. That's all there is about that. Okay. Let's go on. So we have two types of relative clause. Okay, two types. They're either defining relative clause or they are non-defining relative clause. Okay, so defining relative clause are relative clauses that are that define the noun. Okay, that are necessary to define the noun or for others to recognize the noun. Without them, the sentence is not correct and it doesn't make much sense. It is confusing to the listener. Okay, non-defining relative clause are relative clauses that are non-defining. Right, the word says they don't add up anything to the sentence except for they are extra information. They are not something necessary, and if you delete them or omit them in the sentence or the clause shall still make sense. Okay, in that case. So one very important note, as I told you before, it's wise to use who and which because that can never be used in a non-defining clause. Okay, so non-defining clause require commas. Okay, we need commas. Okay, we require commas. When you have commas, it means it's a non-defining sentence or relative clause. In that case, you cannot use that. Okay, you cannot. You will have to use which. Okay, so not that. Okay, you'll have to use something else. Is that clear? I hope. Yeah. So just try to note it. Commas. It's a non-defining. Note that. Okay, you have to use which or who. Okay. Great. So we have two cases. Okay. So as I told you before, the relative clause joins two sentences together. Okay, so here I'm getting it back to the sentences, then I'll join them together for you. So we have two cases. Either the replaced noun is a subject or the replaced noun is an object. Okay, so first we start with the subjects, then we go on to explain the objects. So look at these two sentences. Two completely separate sentences. I bought a new watch. Okay, so I bought a new watch. A new watch, right? So the new watch is very nice. So the new watch, right? So first you have to look for the repeated noun in both sentences. Okay, as you see, the new watch or new watch is my repeated noun. Okay, after that, what you do is pretty simple. You decide whether the repeated noun is people or things. In this case, a watch, right? A watch is something you wear on your hands, and it tells you time, right? So a watch it's a thing. It's not people, right? It's not people. It's a thing. So I'm using which, right? Which or that, depending on the situation. Both are okay. So that's my first decision. So I put which in between the two sentences here, right? Then I delete the repeated noun. So it's gonna be I bought a new watch, which is very nice. So what remains is this part, right? I bought a new watch. I delete the repeated noun and I put which here, right? I put which, right? So it's gonna be I bought a new watch, which is very nice, right? Which is very nice. Look at this second example. She lives in London. London has many restaurants, right? So the repeated word is London, right? The city. So I have my repeated noun, and as you see in my second sentence, the repeated noun is a subject, right? It's a subject, just as it was in this case. The new word is very nice. My new word is my subject, right? We're talking about subjects here. So it is my subject, right? It's my subject. So because it's repeated, I will write the first sentence, right? And I look at it. Is London a thing or people? Is it people? No, it's a place, right? So I use which, right? I use which, correct? So which, and then I remove London, which has many restaurants, right? So she lives in London, which has many restaurants. But I have a comma. Why do I have a comma? Because this second relative clause, which has many restaurants, is extra information, right? It's a non-identifying clause, so I cannot use that, right? I have to use which. In this case, I could also use that, but in this case, no, I have to use which, because it's a non-identifying clause. It's extra information, correct? So London has many restaurants. Everybody knows it, right? Of course, London has many restaurants. It's a city, right? It's a big city. It has many restaurants for sure. So it's extra information, right? Which means if I remove this clause, the sentence will still make sense. She lives in London. Great, right? I have my information. Mr. Tim has many students. Mr. Tim has many students. The students cheated. Oh, shame. So students, right, is repeated in both sentences, okay? Sometimes to recognize the repeated noun, you have to know the meaning of the sentence. It's quite necessary, actually, at this level of your English. You have to be able to recognize the repeated noun, otherwise you'll be in trouble. So I have students repeated here. So I rewrite my first sentence, correct? Then I look at it, it's the students, which means it's people, so I have to use who, right? And then I delete this part, right? I delete it, and after I delete it, I'll be left with the word or the verb cheated. So Mr. Tim has many students who cheated, right? This is not extra information, right? This is not extra information because maybe he has more students and this many cheated. So I have a bigger scope to look at. So I hope that's clear. So and the most important note here is that I cannot remove the relative pronoun which, and who. I cannot remove them because my repeated noun for which I deleted the repeated noun was a subject. Because it was a subject, I cannot delete it, okay? It doesn't make sense anymore. Mr. Tim has many students cheated. That doesn't make sense. That's not English, okay? I need the who. I need it to be there to make sense. Same case goes for this, okay? And same for this. I cannot delete it because I removed a subject, okay? Is that clear? Hopefully, yes. So when the replaced noun is an object, right? So what would you do in that case when it's an object? Okay, so let's go on with this. So she loves the cake. I made the cake. So she loves the cake. The cake is repeated, right? The cake. And the repeated noun in this case is the cake. But the problem is, it's not really a problem, but the case is the cake is an object because it has come after a verb. So it's an object. So you do the same procedure. You rewrite the first sentence because the cake is a thing. So I can use that, right? Or which, right? I can use it here. Then I remove this, okay? I delete this part and I will be left with the cake that, right? That I made, okay? So that's what I will be left with. She loves the cake that I made. Same thing, but the good thing here is that I can remove this, okay? It's optional. I don't have to have it, okay? Because the repeated noun I deleted was an object, right? So she loves the cake I made. Perfect. It's English. It's good. Okay, it makes sense. But you can also say she loves the cake that I made, or which I made. But it's more actually it's more natural to say she loves the cake I made. We usually delete it. Okay, it's a good idea to delete it. I met a girl in the bazaar. I liked the girl in school, right? So the repeated noun is a girl or the girl. Okay, the girl. Okay, so I met a girl in bazaar. I liked the girl in school. Okay, so this is my first sentence. Because it's a girl, I can use who or that, right? It's a person. So I will write this sentence just like it is. So I met a girl in the bazaar. Who or that, right? Then I remove this, the second repeated noun, right? I liked in school, so it becomes I met a girl who I liked in school in the bazaar. So this is not really, it's a little bit bizarre to put it here, but it is always a good idea to link the sentences right together, okay? Same thing goes, for example, I talked to Mr. Jihad. My father had met Mr. Jihad. So Mr. Jihad is pretty clear that is my repeated noun, and it is also pretty clear that Mr. Jihad is an object in my second sentence. So I rewrite this part, right? I rewrite this part, and I delete Mr. Jihad in the second sentence, and I put who here, right? Who. So I talked to Mr. Jihad, who my father had met. I can remove who, right? I can remove it because it's an object repeated. So I talked to Mr. Jihad, my father had met. Really not a good idea to remove it here, but you can always remove it, and it should be sense making. Okay. So we talked about subject and object, right? So I only have more examples for you, nothing else. The way to learn about this topic is actually by having more examples. You are usually not given two sentences and creating the other one out of it unless you are studying something. But if you are learning, you have to be able to use it in sentences. In this slide, I'll be talking about non-identifying relative clause in which you have commas, okay? You have commas. So it's extra information. My boss, who is very nice, lives in Manchester, right? So I'll solve the first ones for you here. And I'll go back to the sentences it came from. My boss, right, lives in Manchester. So this is my real sentence, right? So it's gonna be, let me repeat this here and explain to you what I mean. So this is my first sentence, right? And my second sentence is he lives in Manchester, right? So I have two sentences now. Where's the comma? Okay, I have two sentences now. My boss lives in Manchester. What am I saying? Oh, he is very nice. I repeated the same thing. He is very nice, right? So I have two sentences. My boss lives in Manchester. He is very nice. So how did I end up with this? First of all, in the content of the situation, I understand that this is extra information. I don't need this, okay? This is enough. So because this is extra information, it really depends on the situation, the sense you have about the information you are giving sometimes. So the comma depends on how the situation is and what you are writing and whom you are writing, right? So my boss lives in Manchester. He is very nice. So my repeated noun is my boss and he in the second sentence. So I rewrite my first sentence, my boss, right? I can do this too, depending on the situation. You can put it in the middle. And the reason it's in the middle is because I am talking about my boss here. So it's a good idea to put it right after it, right? My boss, who, right after the noun, right? Who. Then I remove he, right? Who is very nice, right? So I just removed that. And then I use commas because, as I told you, it's a non-identifying clause. So I can never use that. That is very nice. It's wrong, okay? It will be wrong. And same goes for these. Try them, okay? The same case. Try them and try to understand what they mean. Next slide. Yesterday I called our friend Julie, who lives in New York. These are all online examples, honestly. I didn't come up with them, so we need to figure them out together. Okay. They're the same thing. I don't have to solve this for you. All extra information because we have commas, right? I really love the new Chinese restaurant, which, right? So it defines the same thing coming after it. More examples here. I hope you pause it because I'm kind of running out of time. You pause and you try to solve these examples. Okay, it's really important to learn about this in the English language. It's one of the main steps in learning the language. Okay. Most of them important, and try to understand them, and ask me questions if you had any. You know where to find me, my email, right? So here is my email. I'll be willing to give you more information about. I hope you remember this. Okay, so zr14636@aois.edu.krd, my email, or you can also email me via ayub.aa.ali@gmail.com. Okay, both work, and I'll answer you. I promise I'll answer your email. Okay, so thanks for picking Kut Fairbun, and I hope you enjoy your time. Thank you, and bye bye.